All right, Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, you will be shocked to learn that trusted media, relevant to what we've been talking about, has fallen to a new all-time low. Majority of Americans now say they do not trust mainstream news. Details here also pretty revealing. In particular, 58%, so almost 60%, think that most news organizations are more concerned with supporting an ideology or political position than with informing the public. Gee. Wonder why they think that? Well, let's take a look at what that bedrock of democracy, cable news, has been up to recently over at CNN. Over the past week or so, they broke the bombshell news that Ron DeSantis' PAC is selling Don't Fauci My Florida merchandise. They had on the illustrious John Bolton to call Donald Trump a fascist. They covered updates to the Subway sandwich menu and Trump's former doctor getting upset with reporters. Over on MSNBC, they dug into how awesome Biden advisor Ron Klain is. They also talked about the debate over the term Latinx, the presence of a literal white privilege card on some accused would-be bomber, and also the DeSantis Don't Fauci My Florida merchandise. Fox News, they had on a teacher who believes critical race theory is dangerous. Tucker mocked a new pregnant man emoji, apparently. They covered AOC selling Tax the Rich t-shirts, and they did their own segment on DeSantis' Don't Fauci My Florida merchandise, because of course they did. Now, I want you to think about this. These networks spend millions on hosts, on reporters, on sets, on producers, and this is what they choose to do with those resources. War criminals and invented culture war and uncritical Biden standing and Trump derangement and AOC derangement and apparently Ron DeSantis derangement as well. But even more telling is what you will not find on any of these networks. So as we've covered multiple times here, 1,100 miners are on strike right now in Alabama. Those miners have now been on strike for nearly 4 months in what is truly a historic action. In fact, it is the first widespread miner strike in 4 decades. Pretty noteworthy, especially given the number of workers involved, the fact that some of the picketers have been intentionally struck by cars, and because also of the involvement of major private equity players. And yet, not one of these networks has uttered a single solitary word about this strike over these many weeks and months. Not the supposedly unbiased CNN, not the supposedly progressive MSNBC, whose workers are actually attempting to unionize right now as we speak, not the supposedly pro-working class Fox News. In fact, the news media writ large, they don't really pretend to care about unions or labor in general much anymore at all. Back in 2015, when the New York Times labor reporter Stephen Greenhouse took a buyout at that time, it left the Wall Street Journal as the only remaining large paper with a dedicated labor reporter. That means that the historic teacher strike wave dramatically undercovered, that the current strike at Frito-Lay gets almost no coverage, that the Teamsters' efforts to unionize Amazon also get next to no attention. So if you can't see these battles, then you don't know that other workers are struggling in ways that you might also be struggling. You might not know that having a union does give you the option at least to fight back. The workers who are bravely fighting for more, they're left to do so on their own without the benefit of any public pressure on their greedy corporate overlords. Now here's another good example of what the media chooses to cover and chooses to ignore.
Call 911. Wow.
So you may well have seen that viral video of a shoplifter brazenly filling a bag in a San Francisco Walgreens while the store's security guard looks on recording a video. Shocking scene for sure. This man was later arrested, by the way. Well, while there was wall-to-wall sharing and no fewer than 309 articles written about this one shoplifting incident, there was not a single mainstream article about a much larger heist. Walgreens was forced into a $4.5 million settlement in a class action lawsuit filed against them by their workers who alleged the company was stealing their wages. You can see that here, according to FAIR. These workers said that Walgreens rounded down employees' hours on their time cards, required employees to pass their security checks before and after their shift without compensating them for time worked, and failed to pay premium wages to employees who were denied legally required meal breaks. You tell me which is the bigger story, more likely to impact your life. one man's brazen crime spree or corporate America's brazen robbery of millions of American workers to the tune of literally billions of dollars every single year? But of course, that story's more complicated. Would actually challenge some of the media's advertisers, their donors, their subscribers. Better to punch down or do a culture war or bring on a war criminal to opine on a corrupt buffoon. Got one more for you here. You may recall that the entire city of Flint, Michigan was poisoned in a truly horrifying act that was compounded by a criminal cover-up. The intrepid Jordan Chariton and Jen Dyes, they just uncovered new bombshell evidence of that cover-up. Phones of key players involved in the crime and the cover-up were wiped clean of messages and other data before investigators had a chance to glean exactly who knew what and when. One would think that somebody in establishment media might care about this critical new piece of information for understanding how exactly, again, an entire American city was poisoned. You won't be surprised to learn, however, we heard not a peep. They were too busy reviewing t-shirt prices for their DeSantis Fauci merchandise. Folks, I am afraid I've come to the conclusion that there is no rescuing or reforming the media. Your contempt for them is 100% merited. Cable news in particular, it just combines the worst of capitalism with reality shows, with corruption, and is truly just a cancer on the nation. But I do have a little bit of good news. It's also kind of a house of cards. Could collapse at any moment, to be honest with you. Not just from their ratings collapse, which of course I do love to see, but a new study shows that the ads that are the lifeblood of this bloodless media are completely ineffective. All these people paying to sell Viagra and gold bars or whatever between cable news rage panels, they are wasting their money. 80% of the brands that they studied were actually losing money by placing ads on television. That means that the whole hellscape economic structure underlying all of this medium has already crumbled. The players involved, they just don't know it yet. So in conclusion, cable news is a scam programming model, resting atop a scam revenue model, buttressed by a scam political dialogue. And we will all be better off when the whole dishonest gig is up. Isn't it amazing that not one segment on the minor strike? Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.